statistically speaking, 1 in 3 women face the domestic violence or some sort of gender-based violence in their life. So that's a statistic that we all know. But honestly speaking, domestic violence, gender-based violence is not only for women. It happens in every gender, including LGBTQ community. It doesn't really discriminate any religious belief, culture, background, or where you're coming from, even socioeconomic status. People may think that it happen more in lower income place or place that are not considered as a good neighborhood, but actually it happens in every single community. You think about domestic violence, people tend to think that until they hit you or until it gets physical, people may not consider it as abuse, but which is not technically true. We consider there's so many ways that people can perpetrate or use violence against you. It could be emotional abuse, it could be verbal abuse. Many cases, what we see is that financial abuse. For example, maybe the perpetrator have the access to bank account and not letting you use any money or not allowing you to go to work, so you cannot have your own income. So that's kind of ended up you become very dependent on another person, and it makes it even harder to leave the situation. So how we recognize the violence or domestic abuse is we always use the word power and control. So when you felt like somebody's taking over your power, or when people are telling you what to do, if you feel like somebody's controlling over your life, you feel like you can't do certain thing because you're afraid of somebody is gonna yell at you or hurt you. Any situation that you feel like your power and control over your life is taking away with somebody or someone else, that's a huge red flag to consider. Usually the violence happen in a cycle, and usually it starts with a tension building. Things are okay, but maybe certain things are off, and tension buildings happen and explosion happen. An explosion can be bigger incident that your husband hit you or your boyfriend yell at you, or those big fight between boyfriend and girlfriend. Those things can happen, and usually after the explosion things get better, and it goes on the honeymoon phase. Oh, I am so sorry, I still love you, we still care about each other, let's make it okay, let's do it again. So it kind of go through the whole phase of the cycle. But what's prominent in domestic violence is that that cycle actually goes shorter and shorter and shorter. The longer you stay, the cycle gets shorter and shorter and shorter and become worse. So yeah, so people may ask, like, why doesn't she leave, or why don't you just leave, like things sounds horrible. But we may not want to ask that direct question because there's so many different reasons that survivor of domestic violence face the reason why they cannot leave. For example, talking about those financial restriction. If you are controlled and not being able to go to work, how can you sustain yourself after you leave? Where would you go? Where is the safe place? That's a huge things too. If you have a children, what are you gonna do with the children? Are you gonna go with the children? And you don't have a job, how can you sustain the life with the children? So there's so many variable that people needs to overcome to leave the situation. And especially for Apna Ghar's community, we serve for lots of immigrants, and there's definitely certain level of fear to report the police, because whether they were undocumented or legal immigrants, there's an increased fear of being immigrants in this community right now. So we fear, like they fear to report, and they missed a chance to leave. They feel like they were new to country, they don't know how to live in America on their own. They may not speak English very well. That's whole another reason to stay in, because it's much in their head maybe safer or a little bit easier to have somebody who can speak English to help them in daily lives. So there's so many different variables, and it is really harsh question to ask survivor, why didn't you just leave? Because there's so many reasons that they cannot just take that step. And I want to say like one more thing about leaving. The time that they leave is the most dangerous time. And most the homicide connected to the domestic violence happens the time of the leaving or after they leave the relationship. After they leave the situation, for the abusers and they have nothing to lose, they can do more elaborated things, or they were leaving from this very controlled situation. If they notice if abuser noticed anything, the shift in the survivor, oh, she's gonna leave, he may do something to prevent, he may do anything to prevent her to leave. So we really want to understand that that's the most dangerous time for the survivor. That's why we have to be very, very careful. And it's not as a friend, it's not your job to find the solution for her or for the survivor. And we need to treat the survivor as an expert of the situation. We may not give out, even us, we may not give out particular advice or force them to do something that they're not ready to do. So it's more of just listening to the story, understanding the situation, and making sure that she feels safe to come to you. And you may offer emotional support of like, if you need to talk to anybody, I'm here, and I promise I'm not gonna tell anybody about your situation. Or you may, if she is too afraid to call the police, or if she may not speak better English, you may provide those support for like, do you want to do things together, or how can I help you? But alternatively, I want people to remember that the domestic violence is about power and control taken away from that person. So ultimately what we want to do is giving back the power to them. So us trying to do everything for them would not help. So we want to make sure that listening to what the survivor wants to do, what's the survivor's desirable outcome, and we help them to achieve that goal. I want to tell those people to have a courage and to speak out to anybody that you feel comfortable. It could be our crisis line, it could be your friend, it could be anybody. And I want everybody to have faith that just one breakout moment of one word can change anything. It could be a trigger of bigger change, but it starts with reaching out. And know that those helps are there. We are here, open arms, waiting for the people. And whenever you're ready, we're here to support you, help you through the healing process, and bring, support you to work through the journey of reclaiming the empowerment and individuality. So I just want people to know that we are here and help are out there. So